I was once giving a conference on the consecrated life to a group of Salesians when one of the participants asked me, "Father, why do we say that we Salesians live the consecrated life? Aren't all Christians consecrated in their baptism, and therefore don't they too live the consecrated life?" I replied saying, "Of course they do." And he asked, "Then what's the difference?" And so I went on to tell him that Jesus himself established two ways of following him. One way was that of living at home in their families, carrying out their daily tasks, and adhering to the person and message of Jesus by practicing the good news he preached. Among these disciples were his own mother, Mary, Lazarus and his sisters, Mary and Martha, Joseph of Arimathea, Nicodemus, and several others. That was one group. We shall call them his ordinary disciples. But there was another group of disciples who followed him. We are told that Jesus called those whom he desired, and they came to him. And he appointed 12 to be with him and to be sent out to preach. We shall call the second group his itinerant disciples, because they accompanied him everywhere. To this group belonged the 12 apostles, but also the 72 disciples and some women, Mary Magdalene, Joanna, Susanna, and several others mentioned in the Gospels. Now, between the two groups, there were two absolute differences. While the first group of disciples, ordinary discipleship, was open to all, the second group, itinerant discipleship, was restricted to those who were personally chosen and called by Jesus like his apostles, and who, enamored by the person of Jesus, accepted some radical renunciations to give up wife and family, that is, their professions and their life plans to be with Jesus, to live a poor, simple life, that is, to leave aside their own economic affairs, to live obedient to Jesus, that is, to let Jesus direct their lives, to form a new family around Jesus, that is, a community of persons who lived and moved around with him, to dedicate themselves entirely to Jesus' mission, that is, to become fishers of men, to be at the service of the Father, following the plan of life traced out by Jesus. Both were genuine forms of discipleship of Jesus. Both were genuine ways to holiness. Today, we give a name to these two forms of discipleship of Jesus. We call them the Christian life and the consecrated life. Through our baptism, we enter the Christian life. We follow Jesus. Through our religious profession, we enter the consecrated life. We follow Jesus more closely. Let us compare these two ways of following Jesus. All Christians in following Jesus are called to love him more than anyone else. He who loves father or mother more than me is not worthy of me. And they are called to live a chastity in line with their own state of life. Consecrated persons go further out of a total love for Jesus and an imitation of him. They give up marriage itself and embrace a life of chastity. All Christians are reminded by Jesus that one cannot serve God and wealth. They are called to live a simple life and guard against all kinds of greed and the abundance of possessions, poverty. Consecrated persons go further and give up property and possessions because of the example set by Jesus himself, and that's poverty. All Christians seek to obey the Father's will, which comes to them from Jesus through the Gospels and the Church. Jesus said, "He who has my commandments and keeps them, he it is who loves me." Obedience. However, all Christians can decide many things for themselves. For example, their place of residence, the studies they wish to pursue, and the work they would like to do. Consecrated persons obey God's will as it comes to them from Jesus through the Gospels and the Church. But they go further. They choose to follow Jesus more closely after his example of obeying the Father's will as it came through human mediations like Mary and Joseph, Pilate, and the chief priests. So, consecrated persons obey the Father's will as it comes to them through the mediation of their superior. All Christians form part of and share in the life of the community of the church, fraternal life. A beautiful example of this is seen every Sunday when the whole Christian community comes together for the celebration of the Eucharist. Consecrated persons go further, drawing inspiration from Jesus, who formed a community with his disciples. Some, namely religious, live and work together 24/7 as a permanent community. Others, namely members of secular institutes, live and work individually but maintain close unity and friendship among themselves, fraternal life. All Christians are called by their baptism to take part in the mission of the church in every way they can in the society and culture in which they live. Consecrated persons go further, drawing inspiration from Jesus, whose whole life was centered on his Father's mission. They make themselves totally available for a lifelong service at any time and in any part of the world. Mission. Consecrated life following Jesus more closely, which means living the Christian life more deeply and fully. Salesian consecrated life, following Jesus more closely the way Don Bosco did. And why the three vows? They symbolically embrace our whole life, loving, having, and willing. The consecrated life, a service to the church and to the world. Today we are realizing more and more that the purpose of God's gift to us of the consecrated life is not for ourselves alone, for our own sanctification and holiness. That would be a kind of spiritual selfishness, but is intended by God for others. Our own human experience teaches us that no important value can establish itself in society without some dedicated persons to live it and spread it around. For instance, the safeguarding of health in society, a very important value, is everyone's responsibility, but it requires the full-time commitment of some people, doctors, infirmarians, and so on, and structures, universities, hospitals, clinics, and so on. Now we know that in the Old Testament, all the Jews became God's consecrated people on Mount Sinai, when they promised to obey the Ten Commandments and were sprinkled with the blood of animals. Yet, throughout their history, God called certain individuals from among them and gave them a further consecration as priests, prophets, and kings. Why? Because there was a need of these persons to keep alive in all the people the remembrance of their covenant with God. In much the same way, in the New Testament, God chooses and consecrates people in baptism to be sons and daughters in Jesus. And from among the consecrated people, He chooses certain individuals and gives them a further consecration as priests and religious. Why? To keep alive in the people of God the memory of the baptismal consecration. That is, to remind Christians of their mission of living like Jesus, and in this way to make Him present and active in the world today. Now you understand why the Church says that to some, for the good of all, God gives the grace of the consecrated life. And it calls the three vows a therapy for humanity. Consecrated persons remind people that God exists, that He can be found in each one's heart, that He loves everyone, and that in Him everyone can find true happiness and fulfillment. That is why He deserves the first place in each one's life. Consecrated persons manifest the joy of falling in love with the person of Jesus, and now His love can so fill their hearts that they do not need anyone or anything else for their happiness and fulfillment. Consecrated persons reveal the true face of the Church as the community of all those who believe in Jesus and who strive to become in the world the living remembrance of His way of living and acting. Consecrated persons, by their poverty, invite everyone not to set their heart on the things of this world, but to trust in divine providence. Consecrated persons, by their chastity, remind everyone that chastity is possible today and that the real meaning of love lies in giving oneself to another. Consecrated persons, by their obedience, convey to everyone the message that in following God's plan, we find our true happiness. Consecrated persons, by their dedication to the service of the poor, are a reminder of the dignity of every human being and of the joy that is to be found in sharing. Consecrated persons, by their life of prayer, remind everyone of the need to converse with God, their loving Father and friend. Consecrated persons, by their striving for holiness, remind everyone that holiness is the highest realization of man, that everyone on earth is called to and can attain. Questions for reflection and sharing. Do our young Catholics see and understand their Christian life as a following of Jesus? Do they consider their Christian life as a vocation, in the sense that they are called by Jesus to follow him in their daily lives? Note, if they do not see their Christian life as a following of Jesus, it will be more difficult for them to understand the consecrated life as a closer following of Jesus. Is it possible to train our young people for the apostolate, or at least to give them a taste for the apostolate in their own small way? Don Bosco got many of his boys to be apostles among their companions. Apostolate means generosity, reaching out to others, giving a helping hand, and finding a joy in doing so. This is good material for a vocation.